What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have part 2 of our lowering series on Brian's Hardbody. On part 1 we did the rear kit with the lowering block and the new shocks, and today we're going to be doing the drop spindle set for the front. This is the complete Belltech kit with the Street Performance series shocks. So if you buy this kit as a whole, it's going to come with everything that you're seeing on this video and everything that you saw on our previous video. If you are buying this separately, then you should see just this parts for the front, or see the kit that we show you for the rear. So now we're basically ready to move on to the front. Hopefully you already watched our first part, or if you're watching the whole video right now, then we're gonna move right into this one. We are gonna open right now the box and show you everything that comes with the kit. We'll show you the shocks as well, and then from here we're gonna move on to the truck and start getting to work over there. So we're pretty excited about it. Brian, what do you think? We're ready to do the front?
Yeah, I'm ready to finish it.
Let's do it. Here we have the parts out of the box, and it's actually pretty simple stuff. We thought there was going to be a lot more in it, but there's literally just the 2 drop spindles and the 2 front shocks. So a lot of the hardware here for the shocks is already put in here. For the spindles, we are just going to be reusing the stuff that's already in the truck. So not a lot of stuff that comes with the kit. You also have the instruction manuals, some stickers in here, but basically that's all that comes with it. So now we are ready to move on to the truck and start taking some of the old parts out so we can swap them out with the new ones. All right, guys, so look at the height right now. We are gonna measure real quick. So we are sitting at about 27 inches from the floor all the way to the top here on the fender. So after we do this kit, this is a 2-3 drop. So technically we should drop to 25 inches on the front. We should get rid of some of this gap here. So we're gonna see how it is once we're done doing the drop spindle, and see where we sit at after the whole new suspension kit and the whole refresh for the front of it. So hopefully we're gonna be sitting at 25 or maybe even lower. We'll find out here at the end of the video. So let's get right into working on the truck and taking everything off and move on to the next step. All right, guys, so here we have the truck. We're about to start lifting, taking the lug nuts and wheels off, and then start getting ready to remove all the old parts so we can put the new ones in. We have our new parts here all ready to go. We're about to put the wheel chocks in place so the truck doesn't move. Make sure our e-brake is on. Like I said, safety first. We're gonna then lift the truck, put our jack stands in place, make sure everything's secure, and then start going ahead and removing everything. So let's get to it. All right, guys, so now we have the truck all nice and supported. We have our jack stand here. The one on the far right is the one doing most of the support right now. We have this one as a backup, and as well as our jack holding it in place as a backup, just in case we want to be just double sure the truck is not going to fall off. But now that we have that out of the way, we have now taken the wheel off, and then the first thing we started doing some PB blaster on some of these old bolts. We want to make sure they're going to be nice and loose by the time we get to them. But the first thing we're going to remove is going to be our brake caliper, and to remove that we have a 19mm bolt that's on the back. It's going to be this bolt right here. Let me see if I can focus. There's going to be one right here, and then there's going to be another one on the bottom. Like I said, that's a 19mm. We're going to remove that and put this suspended out to the side. Make sure it's not pulling on the line or being held by the line. So then we just move it out of the way, and then we're gonna move into taking this cap off so we can then get the nuts out of there and take the whole brake assembly out. So let's do it. All right, guys, so we have our caliper out. Unfortunately, we had to remove the other piece, almost like if we were changing the brake pads, because the brake pads themselves seem to be really stuck to the caliper, and it wouldn't let us remove the whole thing as one piece. Again, I want to tell you that those are 19mm bolts on the back, and if you do have to remove like we did here for this is going to be a 14mm socket. So now we're ready to go ahead and remove this piece out of there and then take this whole thing out. So let's do it. All right, guys, so now that we have removed the cap that is holding everything here in the center, we removed the pin, we removed this kind of crown nut that's holding that in place, and then you're gonna see a nut right here that should be tight, but it shouldn't be too tight. You should be able to almost remove it by hand. At least I was able to on the driver's side. Here on the passenger side, it was a little bit tighter, so Brian had to use the tool. But then once we remove it, we're gonna be able to remove the washer that's in place, and then this whole unit should be able to come out. We have this cardboard piece here where we're gonna put everything the way it went in, so we know exactly the way it needs to go back in. Here, let me show you on the driver's side. So as you can see here, we have already removed everything, the whole caliper and everything in here. So then we have it here the way it came out. Let me move this out of the way. That's not in place. We have our pin. This one unfortunately broke. Actually, they broke on both sides, so we're gonna go and buy new ones for that. But yeah, this is exactly the way it came out. We also cleaning all the oil grease. We're gonna get rid of all the oil grease and put brand new grease in there. Repack the bearings to make sure we all nice, smooth, clean. And then also we're gonna go ahead and remove all the dirty oil grease out of here and put brand new one in there. But basically your rotor and everything is out of the way now. So if we need to get into the spindle, we're gonna have to remove this brake cover, clean all this out, and then start moving into removing the top bolts and all that around it. But let's clean and remove this out of the way, so then we can move on to the next step. Let's do it. So now we are finally able to see the spindle in there that we need to replace. We have removed the brake dust cover, and then the brake dust, a little pro tip on that one. If you are removing it, the Phillips head size on it is 3. So PH3 is gonna fit that perfect. It's gonna prevent from them, you know, stripping and whatnot, which we were having that with our other Phillips. So keep that in mind. PH3 is going to be able to remove those bolts easy without stripping. So now we are ready to start loosening up some of these ball joints and stuff like that. We're going to start removing that one first, and then we're going to move on to the top and also the bottom one. Check it out, guys. So we have now removed the cotter pin in there. We loosened up this nut. This is a 19mm nut, and the easiest way we found to do it was basically someone hold the steering wheel, with someone who comes here with a breaker bar or maybe some power tools and loosen that nut up. We didn't fully remove it because we need to get that tie rod end out, and the best way is going to be to basically loosen it up and either hit it with a hammer or rent the tie rod end removal tools from like AutoZone or something, and use the forks to get it out of there. So once you can get this tie rod end out, we can basically then move on to the ball joints on top and the bottom, and then we can take the whole unit out. So that's what we're gonna do next. All right, guys, so here we removed the tie rod ends, and we went ahead and went to AutoZone and rented this little fork kit to make that a lot easier. Basically, you put it in between it, smack it until that pops off. We did leave the nuts on top to loosen, but on top just so it wouldn't just completely come off, and we can have control over that. But basically, the nuts are a size 19mm. That's why we loosened them up as much as we could, and then we took the whole assembly, as you can see here, out. All right, guys, check it out. So we've been working on the spindle. We are working to remove the top and lower ball joints because we are going to be replacing those on this truck. We're going to put brand new ones in there. If you're not replacing them, you don't have to worry about taking them off. But the tip that no one's talking about online, we searched for it and we couldn't find a clear answer, was on how to get these bolts loose. They're kind of hard. They actually take quite a bit of force. So we had to use a breaker bar in here. Brian had to push it and put kind of basically his whole body weight into it. But for the driver's side, you push the spindle all the way to the right. Let that bottom part. There's a bar here that holds kind of like the this bar right here. That's where your tie rod end connects and everything. Remove that bar. It takes a 19mm socket. For this nut right here, you got to remove that one. Once you remove that one, you twist the spindle all the way to the right on the driver's side, and then you use a 27mm for the bottom ball joint, and you're going to use a 22mm for the top ball joint if you're going to remove just the spindle itself. If you're doing like us and you're replacing your ball joints, the top one, all you need to worry about is basically removing the 4 bolts, and that's going to come off by itself. But before you even get to that part, remove your bottom ball joint nut. That's the toughest one. That's gonna be the 27 millimeter. Remove that one first. Put it all the way to the right, hit it with a breaker bar, force, whatever you need to do, and then remove that one first. Once it's loosened, you can spin it up. Don't take it completely off, but just spin it up as much as you can. And then you can go ahead and move into this one. Like I said, this is gonna be a 22 millimeter. Or if you're replacing the whole ball joint, then just remove the 12. This is a 12 millimeter bolts on the top. There's 4 of them. Take them off, and then this is gonna come off by itself. And then you can go ahead and move on to removing this one. But we're gonna hit it with the forks here to make sure it's loose and it's gonna come off easily before we even get to touching this part. So do that first. So let me move on to the passenger side. On the passenger side, we're gonna do a similar process. We're gonna move the spindle all the way to the right, and then we're gonna put our 27 millimeter here, and then just hit it with the breaker bar and get it loose. It takes quite a bit of force, like I said before. And then we're gonna put the forks in there as well. Make sure that's loose. And after that, then we'll move on to the top. As you can see here, we haven't touched the top at all. Check it out, guys. So now we have our spindle finally off after removing the tie rod end, doing the bottom like we told you guys, removing, making sure that nut is loose as much as possible, just a little bit back in place so we can just use the fork, take it out, smack it out of the way. And then in our case, since we're doing brand new ball joints on the top, we basically just unbolted the 4 bolts on the top and everything is out of the way. So we are good to go there. We are now ready to start getting our lower ball joint out of the way. Once we get that one out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and swap out the new shock and then move on to putting everything back together. All right, guys, we finally got our boot off of here. So we are basically ready to take the snap ring off and then press our lower ball joint, put the new one in there, and then get going with doing, basically putting everything back together the right way. So let's pop that one off, and then we'll move on to replacing our shock and putting the new one in there. Let's do it. Here we have the snap ring that was in there holding the ball joint. So as you can see, we took it out. And what we used to take it out was, we had some of these pliers that open up. And then we used a combination of flathead and needle nose just to kind of grab the edge of it and then start propping it up, and then now it's completely off. So all right, guys, so here we are using the C-clamp we rented out of AutoZone, or I think actually we got this one out of Riley's. We went and swapped it out because we thought we had an issue with the ball joint press, but it was just user error from our part. But here's how we're gonna set it up. Basically, you're gonna put your big adapter on the bottom, put the plate, put the C-clamp, and then we're gonna put the press bolt, I guess you could call it, right on top with the ball joint. We're pressing it down, and then now we're gonna pop that one off. We hit it with some PV Blaster around there just to make sure it's lubricated and goes in there. It makes the process hopefully a little bit easier. And then we're pressing it down. So it already popped once. We're gonna hit it a little bit more, make sure it comes all the way out, and then we should be able to just take it out and put the new one in there. So let's do it. Alright, guys, so as you can see here, after you push it down enough, it's just gonna pop completely off. The whole ball joint is now off of it. So we're gonna clean up here, make sure there's no debris in between it. We don't want anything to get trapped up in there. Clean it up pretty well, and then we'll move on into putting the new ball joint in and also swapping the shock. So let's do it. Alright, guys, so here's the passenger side. It's also completely off. We just want to also tell you, make sure when you're doing this, if you're going to be pressing it out, make sure your plate is center and not moving out of your bottom on the C-clamp. That's very important, because if it starts twisting, that can hurt you. You know, it can pop off at any time, the wrong way and everything. So make sure your plates are very center on the C-clamp, on the control arm itself, and then your bolt is pressing straight into the top of the ball joint here. But now we are ready to start pressing our new ball joints in place. And then I think right before we do that, we're gonna swap out our shocks here and then move on into that. So let's do it. Okay guys, we are now gonna move on to replacing the shocks, and we're gonna show you the best way to go about it. It's basically gonna be remove the bottom bolt, which is gonna be a 19mm bolt but a 17mm nut on this side. So get a 19 from this side and get a 17 for this side. You're going to be able to take those off, and then you're going to have to probably lift it a little bit from the control arm to release some of that pressure on it, and maybe hit it with the mallet, rubber mallet, to get the bolt out. Once you get that bolt out, you can move on to the top, and the top one is going to be a 14mm nut, which you're going to have to also find a way to hold the top of it right here, because it will try to spin. So get some kind of pliers or something and hold the top of it until you remove the whole nut off of it, and then you'll be able to just kind of slide it by using a long Phillips screw or something like a pry bar or something like that. Basically push it through the bottom here, push it up, and then put it to the side and take it out. And then once you take it out, you're ready to put in your new one. And we're gonna do a similar process. What you're gonna do first is you're gonna put in through the top first, and just try to put the nut slightly in there just so it holds it in place, and then kind of do a similar process where you just pry it up from this side and then put it in here. But before you get to do that, the factory ones, tabs here on the side, they're going to be a little too pressed in. It's not going to let you put the other one in there. So try to just move them a little bit to the outside so you can have the new one slide in there a little bit better. And once you get it in place, you're going to have to lift your control arm to get it in place into the new shock. So you put a jack here on the bottom of it, raise your control arm until it lines up with the hole on the new shock, and then slide your bolt in there, hit it with the rubber mallet until it's all the way through, and tighten the bolt in it. We are not doing any torque specs yet, so we're gonna put the shock in place and then we'll move on into torque and everything. So let's do that first. Alright guys, as you can see here, we have our new ball joint pressed in on the passenger side. And the one way we check to make sure it's fully pressed in, there's a small lip here on the bottom where the bottom one is going to match and go against here. I'm going to have to use my other camera so you can get a good look in there. But once that is fully seated all around it, that's when you know you're good. And now we're able to put our ring into it so it's nice and secure. Then we're going to put our dust boot in there. And then we're basically put the little pivot so we can put some grease in it and then grease it up and everything. So we should be good. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. Try to finish up here so we can start putting our new drop spindle in place. Alright guys, just want to tell you that whenever you're going to do the ball joints, make sure you rent the master adapter set from AutoZone as well as the ball joint press set. And then you're going to be using 27310D and 27310M to basically press in the new lower ball joint. This part goes on the bottom, and then this one goes on the top, and then you press it in, and then you should be good. It should be all in nice and secure, hopefully. Make sure you put your snap rings back in there. Make sure everything's looking good. Put your dust boot in there, and then basically we are now ready to put in our new drop spindle. We also went ahead and put the top ball joint in here, so that's already in place, that's already secure. Basically now we're ready to put our new drop spindle in place, secure it, and then make sure we add our tie rod ends into it. So let's do it. right, guys, we got our new drop spindle in place. We have our lower ball joint and our upper ball joint all in place, all tying up the way they're supposed to be. For the top ball joint, we tried to do about 70 pounds on the top from what we found online. I don't think we quite got to 70 pounds, but it has a nylon nut and it's not going anywhere. It's tight the way it's supposed to be, so we know for sure it's going to be secure, so we don't have to worry about that one. On the bottom one, we did about 90 pounds, and we did get a click on that, so that is for sure 90 pounds on the bottom one. It has enough space for the castle nut and the cotter pin to go in place, so that one is also good to go. A quick tip on that: when you're doing the top one, it might tend to spin, and if you see the ball joint spinning, basically you need to put a floor jack and then lift the control arm to the top enough for this to fully get secure in there, and then it's going to hold that ball joint in place. It's not going to move it, and then you can tighten up the nut. After that, we tighten up everything. We're all good to go. We need to just cut the tie rod ends. You have to cut the outer tie rod, about 6 threads. Big shout out to Juan DJ Tex. He reminded me we need to cut it. So I'll post his little Instagram page. You guys give him a follow. Cool dude. So he reminded me we need to cut that up a little bit, which was great because we're going to do it on the new one. And then we're still going to have the same size too, so we can put it in there. That's going to give you more adjustment whenever you go for an alignment, because this one is just a little bit further out, I believe, the way the tie rod ties into the new spindle. So you need to cut that out. Otherwise, they're going to have a really hard time aligning the front end of your truck. So keep that in mind. So we are basically done here on the driver's side. We're going to hop on to the passenger side, get this in, and then cut our tie rod ends, and then start bolting everything back up. We already adjusted and torqued all our other bolts how they're supposed to go, so we're good there. We're only missing this part, and then putting everything back together. So let's get it done. Another tip, guys, when the tie rod ends, whenever you cut the 6 threads out of them, try to make it a little bit smaller. If you make any markings or anything like that to see what the place was, if you're keeping your factory ones, just maybe put it 1 or 2 threads further in to make it a little bit shorter, because if you leave it the exact same way that it was from factory, whenever you actually put everything back together and set the truck down, this wheel is going to be looking this way, and then the driver's side is going to be looking the complete opposite way. And it's going to be it's going to look like the Lightning McQueen from Cars. So you don't want that, because it's going to make it a lot difficult to get to the alignment shop. It's going to be rubbing all over the place. It's going to sound awful as well while you're driving. So just try to make those a little bit smaller and then put them in there, because the new drop spindle seems to be, I guess, closer in as far as the tie rod where it connects. So it pushes your wheel out. So just something to keep in mind when you're putting these ones back together. And then we have our brake in there, our rotor, and then our hub assembly and everything. We greased up everything in here. We put it in there. The nut that's in the middle here holding the bearings, it needs to be tight, but not super tight that there's no movement. Make sure you're moving it both forwards and backwards to make sure you have movement. And don't over tighten that nut, because otherwise it's going to cause you problems with the bearings later on. Now, there is one important thing here when installing your brake calipers back. If you remember from our old spindle, there was this small bar here on the back that we took off to get access to the ball joint nut. That was the bottom one, the lower one. This has a small kind of screw here, as you can see. We need to use that now instead of the long one. As you remember, there was a long one and a small bolt holding the brake caliper. We are no longer going to use the long one. We need to get the small one out of this other piece, because this is going to go on the top here. The reason why this makes a lot more space and everything when it's back there, that's why you have the longer bolt. But in the new one, it doesn't take as much space. So we need to put this one on. If you try to put this one in there and you're trying to tighten it, you're going to end up hitting your rotor from the back. So you don't want that. That's going to scrape. Obviously, you're not going to be able to tighten it all the way, and that's going to cause you problems. So make sure you save the small one, and then we're going to use this one to hold the brake caliper on the top. So let's do it. All right, guys, so here is the final look of the truck. It might not be super obvious, but in person you can definitely tell it's been lower compared to the stock size. The back is also nice and even. We did the 3-inch on the back, and then we did the 2-inch with the drop spindle on the front. So this looks a lot better, just makes the truck look a lot nicer, a little bit lower. So we're gonna measure here in a second so you can see again what we got. We ended up getting on the front, we dropped the 2 inches, so we were at 27 before, and then now we are at 24. So 24 and 3/4. Let me show you here. We're about, might be kind of hard to see depending on the angle there, but 24 and 3/4 pretty much is where we are sitting. And if we look at the back as well, we are also sitting at about 24 and 3/4, 25. Depends how level your ground is, and we might be a little off here, but it's almost exactly the same. And you're not going to be able to tell the difference from just looking at it. I mean, it looks even from front to back, so it looks pretty good. Alright guys, so there you have it. That's how you get the install done with the front spindle. And if you watch our part 1, that's how you get it done also with the lowering blocks on the rear. Overall, it took us quite a bit. It was a little bit annoying having to go back and forth to the store because we were missing tools or having to buy parts and everything. So hopefully if you guys are watching this and you're planning on doing this, it's going to make it a lot easier and a lot faster for you, because you look at the description, look at everything we're doing, and then have your tools ready to go, so then you won't have to make any unnecessary trips. Outside of that, I think we did pretty good. I mean, the rear was probably a, what do you think as far as a 1 out of 5 difficulty?
I give it a 2. If you have like basic mechanical skills, I mean, it should be a walk in the park. It's straightforward.
Yeah, so the rear was, I agree, I think it was about a 2 out of 5 on how hard to do it. If you have someone to help you with, it's going to be a lot faster as well and a lot easier to get it done. The front, I think, is going to be more like a 4. And that's just based on the difficulty of getting some of this parts out. If you never messed with a ball joint press or having to cut tie rods or anything like that, that might be a little intimidating. So I think the front is going to be about a 4 out of 5. What do you think, Brian?
I mean, like we said earlier, you know, the back is always going to be easier if you have somebody helping you out. In the front, some basic fabrication skills will come in handy because you do have to cut out the outer tie rods, right?
Yeah, the outer ones.
Yeah, you got to cut them, you know, a couple threads down. So other than that, it's, you know, it comes in handy if you have somebody else helping you out.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely recommend you get a buddy and help you install it. Maybe 2 or 3 buddies. That'll probably be even faster, I guess. I don't know, but you can definitely also do this by yourself. I did this install on my Hardbody a couple years ago by myself. It definitely took me a lot longer. It was a lot more difficult to do. But if you are thinking and you don't think someone can help you out with it, it's definitely doable by yourself. It's just going to take a lot longer to do it and just be a little more difficult. But overall, I think we're pretty happy with it. He went and got it aligned. Everything looks good. The truck's riding perfect so far. All the new ball joints and everything that we installed in there are pretty good as well. So we are pretty happy with it. Hopefully this video helps you if you're thinking about installing this. Like always, check out the description for any links, tools, and anything else that we use. More information is going to be posted down there, so check it out. And that's pretty much all we have for today, guys. Thank you for watching. This was a long video, so if you stuck through all of the part 2, we really appreciate it. So don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.
P.S. It doesn't ride like a Cadillac, but it's a lot better than before.